I'm Matthew Bamberg Johnson. I'm one of the co-artistic directors for the Speakeasy Society. My background is as an actor. I have my MFA in acting from CalArts, but for the company, do a lot of the business management end of things. I write many emails in addition to performing in shows and doing some assistant directing for the two of these ladies.
I'm Genevieve Gearhart. I'm another one of the co-artistic directors for the Speakeasy Society. Technically, my background is also in acting and dance and choreography. For the company, I also do a lot of directing.
And my name's Julianne Just. I am the third co-artistic director of the Speakeasy Society, and my background is in directing. I have an MFA in directing from CalArts. We're actually all graduates of the CalArts MFA program. And well, I like to think of myself mainly as a director. I also wear a lot of hats and do some of the administrative lifting as well. My third year of grad school, they have an institute directing class that's taught by each semester by a different directing student. And it's a chance for people in different disciplines or different backgrounds to take a directing class and kind of get their feet wet.
Leanne was still like bringing me on for little projects, but I was like, oh, I love directing. This will be a chance for me to get to flex that muscle that I'm not getting to do as much. And I was like, also, it's taught by my friend. It'll be great. But one of her assignments was to stage the first scene of Macbeth with the witches. I think that was the only prompt.
Yeah, and the class was just in like a bare studio room, you know, in a theater school. And so I had said to the class, you know, feel free to use any space on campus. And I kind of encouraged them to do it. There were a lot of designers in the class, and obviously for a class project, you're not going to get to design and build out a space. So I was like, why don't you think about the campus as a space and like consider using spaces somewhere kind of that are pre-designed, and then being responsive to it. So
I kind of took a look around campus, and I found a women's restroom with probably about 6 stalls. And I thought that would be a great place to do the first scene with these witches. They could enter kind of through the stalls, and the audience would be in the restroom with them. And I used the faucets to create a soundscape for the piece. And Julianne saw it, and she thought that there was a spark there, that it was interesting, and she offered up the idea of working on it further and expanding it, and we came up with the idea to tell the witch's story of Macbeth. So tell the story of Macbeth, but through their eyes, and we used all of the scenes that the witches were in to create probably about a 20-minute piece where the audience was with the witches in this restroom. So it was our first real experiment in immersive theater. And that's what we now specialize in. After that moment, we really saw that people enjoyed not just sitting back and watching something passively, but being an active part of the experience.
You need your audience. The show doesn't exist without the audience. And if no one's coming to see the work, it kind of doesn't matter what you're saying, because again, in a lot of ways, theater is an experienced form. You need people to witness it for it to exist. And so I do think there was a big shift, with immersive theater. The audience is the core of it. It needs the audience to happen. And so I think there is you have to shift the way you think about making it. It is both art and a business. And so I do think we really kind of opened our minds up to like, you both want to create work that's important to you and meaningful, but also we want to create work that we can sell tickets to, that can have some sustainability.
Well, and we all kind of separately had done research on experimental, site-specific or participatory forms before. I was really influenced by Happenings and some of the Richard Schechner and performance group work, things of that nature. But we also all saw Sleep No More, and I think that was a real light bulb moment of saying, "Oh wow, this is a commercially viable model. There are people who are really tapping into some deep-seated need when they come and they see this type of work." And so we said, well, can we do this? Could we make this work?
I think the big thing is immersive theater is it's not totally new. This idea has existed for many, many years, but it's becoming much, much more popular now. And more people are trying to create work, which means everyone's still trying to figure out what immersive is. And that is one thing that's been really big with our company. Every show we do, we try to do it in a different format. So we're never always working in the exact same style or participating with the audience in the same way. Rules change. And I think that really opens us up to being available to working with people in other disciplines.
We try to be very open and honest about that, about what our strengths are and where there's room for growth or room for collaboration with other groups. We could try to be set designers. We could try to learn how to code and put things together, but that's not going to produce as good of a product as it will if we're able to find other similarly minded people who are excited about creating something new.
Sometimes it's a direct collaboration, but sometimes too it's about finding the right fit. So I think about we created a show called Ebenezer. It's kind of our take on A Christmas Carol. It's an immersive sandbox piece. So as an audience member, you enter the space and you can kind of go anywhere. So you can choose to follow a character, or you can just choose to kind of sit down at a table and spend as long as you want there. It's really for you to decide where you go and what you discover. But that was one where the space itself was kind of pre-designed. It was very much at Golden Road Brewery, they have a kind of back room. It's called Chloe's, and it's been designed to look kind of like an English pub, kind of a modern hipster English pub. It's a very cool space.
Yeah, we were actually there for a brewer's dinner that night, and we're just so blown away by the space that we found the woman who was the manager and just said, "Hey, so do you ever do events here? What's this look like?" And she was fascinated by what we were pitching, so we came back and cooked up a proposal for her.
But it was true. Immediately, as we sat down and we were looking around and we were like, this is a place for a Christmas Carol. Like the space spoke to us and told us what it wanted.
Well, and I think that's, so many places, whether they're performance-based or not, are looking to bring new people in, right? They're looking to get people into their spaces, to experience their products, to come out, right?
You remember an experience that's aligned to narrative in a way that you're not necessarily going to remember a party. So you could say, oh, it was a great party, the drinks were good, and there was nice music. But if you go on an adventure, if you have a shared experience, if you're changed or transformed through what you do, that's going to be you're going to become a much more powerful brand ambassador. So it's interesting. We have done kind of contract work as performers for activation events and things that other companies have organized, but
for the brands out there, I think the common path is you want to advertise your stuff, so you're going to go to an advertising agency. And I think advertising agencies now are starting to engage bringing people on for activations and immersion to their staff, but they're not directly reaching out to the creatives, right? Like, so the idea of, like, instead of hiring an advertising agency who might contract or have someone on their staff, I'm going to actually just hire this creative company to design my campaign. So we have different kind of processes for different projects. So we have some that are kind of actually feel more like a TV's writer's room, where we have a story idea and kind of a dynamic for the way we see the audience moving through the interaction. And as a group, we'll actually plot through kind of the story / interactive moments within that story and then write a script around it. So that's kind of one version. In another version, like the show you saw last night, that was something where we had this novel and we were really inspired by it. So we actually brought together a group of actors and we just started creating kind of workshops where we explored different themes and how to activate an audience in that theme with these actors.
So what you might encounter is an actor who has 5 responses depending on what you feed them. Right. So there is a changeable nature of the interaction based on what input you give to the actor. But they know what it's going to be because they can kind of predict the way that you might respond to them.
And even though everything is very scripted, we always talk to our actors. There are 2 things that we talk to our actors about. One is you have a script, right? So you're going down the script, like you're a train on the track. But every once in a while, an audience member says something to you that's going to take you off the track. And that's totally fine. And guess what? That's the moment where you're going to improv. But you're going to improv around and then come find your way back to the script.
And you have to do that. That's so essential, because if you try to keep going directly on the same track, it's not going to feel like an authentic experience.
So we talk a lot about creating the character's brain. That it's not just like, I get my script, I memorize my script, I know these words that the character says. I need to know how the character feels about these 5 different things. And maybe I don't ever explicitly talk about them in the script, but what if an audience member asks me about something? Well, I have to know maybe how I would respond to that. So when people spend enough time with these characters, it becomes immediate. As soon as an audience member says something to me, it's like, oh, well, I know exactly how I feel about that, so I can have a 2-line conversation with you before I get back to the next thing.
We've been very lucky to work with a lot of actors on multiple projects. So as we've been learning more about what it is to create immersive, they've been learning more about what it means to perform an immersive. And so it is different than just doing a film or a play. Style-wise, it kind of lives between both, right? It's there are moments that you need to, the scale is like being on a film set, you know, it can be close, it's personal, but sometimes given the challenge of the space, it does have to become theatrical so that everyone in the room who is supposed to experience it can.
And as an actor, it's very different to look into an audience member's eyes who is there and present with you than to look into your fellow actor's eyes.
Yeah.
It's just a very different feeling, and it can be very scary because that is unknown. Whereas if the person across from me is an actor, they know the next thing. They're the kind of there to save you, to have your back in that moment. But if it's an audience member, you have to trust and you have to follow them as well. So there's more give and take, which as an actor can be very exciting once you become comfortable in that space.
Obviously, we don't want to ask our performers to do anything they're uncomfortable with. Again, maybe normally I dance with the audience member, but I'm getting the impression that they don't really want any physical engagement. Therefore, I'm going to make this more of a verbal exchange. Vice versa, I'm feeling uncomfortable. This person's being kind of touchy back in a way I'm not okay with. So I'm going to choose to make this more of a verbal. So we do try to set it up like that so that both as an audience member, if the audience member is giving cues that they're uncomfortable, that the actor's prepared to read that and back up.
It really is a challenge in narrative, and we talk about this a lot about, do audiences really want complete agency? And our answer to that is no, they don't. You want the feeling of agency. You want the sense that the choices that you make are creating an emotional effect. And that's where that deviation from the rails and then going back to the rails really comes into play as well. The ending has to be the ending.
And you will always have someone, for them, the experience is about finding the boundaries, right? It's kind of the person who in a video game will run all the way to the edge to prove there is an edge. And they're like, haha, see, I knew it wouldn't go on forever. And so you'll have people that's what they want out of the experience. But I think the vast majority do want to have an kind of emotionally and intellectually satisfying adventure. I think it's being innovative, but not just to be innovative, right? It's like any innovation happens as a direct result of trying to explore a new question or solve a new problem, right? It isn't just doing something new to do something new. But also I'd say a big thing too, it's working together and thinking outside of roles. Like I think as a company, we've really thrived because not just the 3 of us and our core group of collaborators, but anyone who comes in the process really has a voice and is allowed to explore and think kind of outside their traditional artistic métier or role in a process.
And I would say play test, right?
Yeah.
So get it up on its feet, try it, let it be messy, work too quickly, but then learn from that, right? So failure is an opportunity. It's something that is not an end point, but then a new area from which you can grow and expand.
Work quickly, work fast, and look for those little sparks, those little grains, and then pull those out and then build upon that. Because I think that's where you're going to find something that's new or different without just, like Juliette said, doing it to be new or different. So root it in something and then continue to explore the things that make people go, Oh, that thing. I don't know why, but I can point to that and say that was interesting, and I want to see it again, and start to explore meaning why that was interesting.
And just one thing about guest experience too is, you can never 100% predict what people are going to do in a given space. But I think it's your responsibility as a creator or as a creative team to provide them with all of the possible clues and evidence and information that you can for how you would like for them to behave, and to have the humility to say that if they are not meeting those expectations, it's probably your fault. You probably did not provide them with enough information or clear information to prompt their behavior in the way that you were desiring.
We've just felt it's really important that the audience experience kind of, that you let them walk away with the kind of carrying the realness of that experience.
Well, because they're the star of the show,
Yeah,
right? That's what it comes down
Especially
to.
in the Johnny cycle.
Yeah, it's about their experience. It really is not about the performers. They are the conductors for the audience, for their journey. They guide them along whatever evolution or process they need to go through.
To make work like this isn't cheap, and so there is a certain amount of, oftentimes tickets are more expensive than they might be for a traditional play, but I think you see it reflected in the experience. Instead of being one of 99 people sitting in a house with, a couple actors on stage, in this case, our audience to actor ratio is, I think, 2 audience members to every actor. So you're getting a lot of personalized attention in there, because it's still linked with theater. People kind of view it as buying a theater ticket still and consider it in that way. And in some ways, it's something different. It's an event.
And one other thing that I think would be great for your students to focus on, and is a nut that we have difficulty cracking, particularly in the LA market, is it can be difficult to get press coverage for these kinds of events. There's kind of a gap in the middle between what would be considered to be more fan blogs, people who are already the converted enthusiasts for this work, which has a relatively narrow audience, I would say, and then the larger publications, LA Times, things of that nature. And the barrier for entry to get into those larger publications is very high. And given the changing media landscape, that's just a challenge. How do you get the message out to as broad of an audience as possible? And part of the way that you do that is through advertising partnerships, turning it into more of an event. So it's not just a play, but there's more attached to it.
Because I think if you look at an immersive experience just by the guidelines of what makes a good play or a good theatrical experience, it's not the same thing. Mm-hmm. So even the criticism and critique of it, the experience of coming in as a reviewer, you are looking at a different sort of experience, and you need to shape kind of the review, looking at it in a slightly different light, I think. So.
Okay, great. So go ahead, Shane. What was your question? Was it about what we were talking about? The audience, different solo, group, big, the choices.
Yes.
Choices, individual.
I know. I think that was it. But let me actually go to a question that I